They go back to their dressing room and still no Ozzy. When I make the announcement that the concert is canceled, maybe that'll calm the crowd down a little bit. And Noel Monk's thinking, or maybe they're going to start throwing bottles. There are a lot of kind of memorable, notorious events in Ozzy's career, but there's one that really stands out as something that kind of symbolizes the excess and the chaos of being a rock star. And it was something that happened while he was with Black Sabbath toward the end of Black Sabbath's career, at least with Ozzy. And it was while they were touring with Van Halen. And it happened on November 9th of 1978. They were supposed to be playing a concert at the Municipal Auditorium in Nashville, but the concert was canceled at the last minute. And I'm talking about last minute, meaning they were supposed to go on stage, they were ready for them to go on stage, and they had to cancel the show. And this particular event, this incident is so notorious that it's been written about. Alex Van Halen wrote about it in his book, Brothers. Noel Monk, who is the manager of Van Halen, it's in his book. It's in Tony Iommi's book. It's in Geezer Butler's book. It's in Ozzy's book. It was such a big, significant event. And a lot of you have probably heard this story before. So for those of you that haven't heard this story, it's going to be probably really interesting to hear it for the first time. And those of you that have heard this story, hopefully some of the research that I've done here will add maybe another little twist or something interesting that perhaps you hadn't seen before. So if you look on the screen here, this is actually an advertisement for the particular concert that I'm talking about. Again, that was supposed to happen on November 9th of 1978. And you can see it right here, Black Sabbath, this Thursday, November 9th, 8 p.m., Nashville Municipal Auditorium. Tickets, the first 3,000. I love looking at these prices. It's just so interesting today seeing this. The first 3,000 are $6.50, and the remaining are $7.50. And you'll see right there at the bottom, special guest Van Halen. And this is from the Tennessean. This was printed on November 5th of 1978, just a few days before this concert's supposed to happen. Now, in the Jackson Sun, here's a little announcement about the concert. This was printed in that newspaper just a few days before, also before the concert. Here it is, Black Sabbath to be in Nashville. Black Sabbath, a rock band from England, will appear along with Van Halen at the Municipal Auditorium at 8 p.m. on November 9th. Black Sabbath's lineup includes Geezer Butler, Tony Iommi, Ozzy Osbourne, and Bill Ward. The group's album repertoire includes Never Say Die, Paranoid, Masters of Reality, Black Sabbath Volume 4, Sabbath Bloody Sabbath, Sabotage, Technical Ecstasy, and We Sold Our Souls for Rock and Roll. Okay. Now, the next thing that we come across is from November 12th of 1978. So this is actually a couple of days after the concert was supposed to happen. And this is the next thing that we see. And so it says, today, Black Sabbath heavy metal group makes up for missing their scheduled Thursday night concert. Special guest Van Halen will also play. Showtime is 3 p.m. at Municipal Auditorium. Pass-out tickets from Thursday nights are good for admission or a full refund. Okay, now, they were touring on the album Never Say Die. They'd been working on this album much longer than other albums that they had done. And part of it was because they had the resources to spend so much time in the studio. And then they also were having problems with major drug issues going on inside the band. And also, while they were recording this album, Ozzy Osbourne lost his father. Black Sabbath, in so many different ways, was kind of on the way out. As a matter of fact, before they even started working on that album, Ozzy quit the band. And then he came back. The album comes out on September 29th of 1978. This is Never Say Die. And the concert that we're talking about today happened on November 9th of 1978. So this is basically, 5-6 weeks after the album has been released. They have this concert scheduled and Ozzy disappears. Now, what happened? Well, basically for the 3 previous days, Ozzy Osbourne and David Lee Roth had been involved with something that they affectionately referred to as the Krell Wars, and it was a reference to something from the Forbidden Planet. And to put it simply, with the use of chemicals, both of them had, for all intents and purposes, been awake for about 3 days straight, and they pull into Nashville. and they pull into the Hyatt Regency Hotel. And so Ozzy goes into the hotel. They take his bags. They take them up to room 615, which is the room Ozzy's supposed to be staying in. Now, Ozzy, who's kind of a mess, pulls out of his pocket a key that has the room number 1515. And basically, it's a key that he'd left in his pocket from either the night before or a couple days before or something from another Hyatt Regency hotel they'd stayed on this tour. So he's thinking, without thinking much about it apparently, that he's in room 1515 and the building looks just like all the other hotels that they're staying in. So he walks up to room 1515. When he gets up to that room, the door to the room is open. So he didn't even have to try the key. Because it's open because there's a person in there cleaning the room. And so he walks in and he shows her the key, Hyatt Regency. And she basically says, have a nice stay, and leaves and closes the door. And then Ozzy proceeds, after being wide awake for the last several days. And there's other stories. The story's told different ways. Some people say that he wasn't feeling well, so he drank a bunch of cough medicine, like a whole bottle of it. Whatever. Either way, he'd been involved with this thing with David Lee Roth, and they were a mess. So he proceeds to fall on the bed and fall asleep. Now, Van Halen goes to the Municipal Auditorium and begins sound check. And some people come, while they're doing this, some people come in and say, have you seen Ozzy? Because they start noticing that nobody knows where Ozzy is. So they go through the sound check, they go through all the different things. Black Sabbath comes, they open the doors, crowds coming in, and people still don't know where Ozzy is. They've gone up to his room in the hotel, room 615, the one he's supposed to be in, and the only thing there is luggage. So they're back at the Municipal Auditorium. Where is Ozzy? We can't find him. And hoping against hope that he'll just show up. But they're starting to wonder, did he get kidnapped? Is he dead? Anything could happen at this point. They have no idea, and everybody's starting to panic just a little bit because he's gone. And no one has any idea. No one's seen him for hours. No one has any idea what's going on here. Okay, so now Van Halen actually plays their entire show. This is a crowd of something in the neighborhood of 12,000 people. Sold out auditorium. Van Halen plays their show. They go back to their dressing room and still no Ozzy. So the promoter goes to Van Halen's dressing room and he grabs Noel Monk and he says, I need to talk to you. And he takes Noel Monk out in the hall and he says, look, no one knows where Ozzy is and I need you to do me a favor. And Noel Monk's like, no one knows where. Why is that? Is that my problem or something? So he says, look, here's what I need you to do. If somehow maybe we can get your band, get the guys from Van Halen to go up on stage and maybe jam a little bit on some Sabbath stuff, and then that'll help me when I make the announcement that the concert is canceled. Maybe that'll calm the crowd down a little bit. And Noel Monk's thinking, or maybe they're going to start throwing bottles and go nuts. So he says, please just do me a favor. And Noel goes, well, I'll talk to my guys. So he goes back into the dressing room, tells the guys in Van Halen what's going on and what they're being asked to do. And they say, they're going to kill us if we go out there. And Noel goes, I agree. So what did they do? They hopped in their limos and they got out of there as fast as they could. So now the promoter has to get up on stage, and just like expected, he makes this announcement that Black Sabbath is canceling the show, and the place goes nuts. Bottles being thrown. Still, nobody knows where Ozzy is. And according to Alex Van Halen in his book, he says everybody was panicked about this. He's gone. Is he kidnapped? Is he dead? What's happening? And he says that they searched for him like everywhere. Stairwells, conference room, everything until about 2 a.m, and they gave up. And they all went to bed wondering what in the world is going on here. So then, as the story goes, the next morning, Ozzy, several people have told this story, just comes walking into the lobby like nothing had happened. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to these newspapers and read a couple things that came out of these newspapers reporting on this incident. I'm going to share these with you, and then I'm going to actually read you a little bit out of Ozzy's book where he tells his side of what actually happened here. And then to wrap it up, I'm going to read you a concert review that came after the concert was finally played. I think you're going to find all this stuff so interesting. Okay, so here we are on November 12th, 1978, and here is the report of what had happened. Singer slept through showtime, and this is from the Times in Gainesville, Georgia, where they made this report. Singer slept through showtime. Nashville, Tennessee, the lead singer for the British rock group Black Sabbath went to sleep in the wrong room of a Nashville hotel Thursday night and caused the cancellation of a sellout concert before 12,000 fans while police frantically searched for him. Lieutenant Sherman Nickens said authorities originally thought John Ozzy Osbourne might have been kidnapped, but the singer turned up Friday, Nickens said. Here's a man who makes a lot of money and has never missed a show in 10 years, Nickens said. He doesn't drink or use dope. He disappears and his people are so frantic, so it was possible that something happened to this man while all the time he's sleeping. Yeah. The whole point of this entire thing was that he was so messed up because of a massive, massive drug use. That's what led to this in the first place. And it's so funny how they tried to spin it going, no, he doesn't ever do anything like that. This was just an oversight, just kind of an accident. According to Nickens, Osbourne had gone up to the 15th floor of the Hyatt Regency in Nashville and saw a maid coming out of a room. He said the 29-year-old singer went to the room Thursday afternoon and woke up 4 a.m. today. And according to Noel Monk's book, part of the reason they put those spins on there is because, they're dealing with insurance policies and legal issues when you cancel a show. If it's due to negligence, it's a whole nother issue. And so they're doing everything they can to spin it in such a way that it sounds like, look, this just wasn't a big deal, when in actuality, it was just complete negligence. Anyway, so now this is from the News and Record. This is from, let's see here, December 15th, 1978. It looks like this might have been part of something that Rolling Stone had written. Okay, here we go. Quote, "Oh, don't remind me, such an embarrassment," unquote, said Black Sabbath singer Ozzy Osbourne when Random Notes phoned him about how he'd fallen asleep in the wrong room of his Nashville hotel recently, forcing the postponement of the band's gig and sending police on a frantic night-long search. "You can easily get lost in these bloody places," said Ozzy, bemoaning the fact that his Nashville hotel had the same layout as the previous evening's hotel in Birmingham. Oz, after checking into the Nashville Hyatt Regency and drinking a cup of coffee downstairs, had reached into his pocket and pulled out a key to room 1515 of the Birmingham Hyatt Regency. His bags had been taken to room 615, but Oz, guided by mysterious internal commands, rode to the 15th floor, walked past the maid who was cleaning 1515, and fell asleep. Meanwhile, 12,000 ticket holders lined up for refunds, and the other band members sent police chasing after what they feared were Ozzy's kidnappers. Quote, "I felt very refreshed," said Oz, who woke up at 4 a.m., realized he'd missed the show, and finally tracked down the other members. Black Sabbath played the date the next night, and happily, according to Ozzy, quote, "The kids got off on it, chucking fire extinguishers on the stage and stuff." Okay, now I'm going to read to you just a little bit out of Ozzy's book where he talks about this event, this experience. And then, like I said, I'm going to share with you the concert review, one of the concert reviews that were written the next day about that show. All right, check this out. "One of my last memories of being with the band was missing a gig at the Municipal Auditorium in Nashville." And that's kind of an important thing because this was November of 1978 and it was April of the following year. So December, January, February, March. It was just a few months after this that he was officially kicked out of the band. And so this was one of those things that in some ways it wasn't a last straw, but it was something where the guys in the band go, look, this is too much. This guy's unstable, and it's actually hurting the band having this person here who we just can't even count on anymore. He's gone so far off course. He's lost so much control of himself. Okay. I hadn't slept for 3 days straight. I looked like the Walking Dead. My eyeballs felt like someone had injected them with caffeine. My skin was all red and prickly, and I could hardly feel my legs. But at 5 o'clock in the morning on the day of the gig, I finally hit the sack at the Hyatt Regency Hotel. It was the best sleep I'd had in my life. So again, they pull into town, they go to the hotel where everybody else goes, they take his luggage to one room, he goes to another, and he is out. All right. And when I woke up, I felt almost normal again. But I didn't know that the key I'd used to get into my room was from one of the other Hyatt hotels we'd stayed in earlier in the tour in another city. My bags had been sent to the right room by the tour manager. I'd gone to the wrong room. When I got to the room, the maid was still in there, plumping the pillows and checking that the minibar was full. So the door was open and I walked straight in. I just showed her the key, which had the right number and the Hyatt logo on it. She closed the door. And he says, I fell asleep for 24 hours. In the meantime, the gig came and went. They had no idea I was zonked out on a different floor in another wing of the hotel. The lads panicked. My ugly mug was plastered all over local TV stations. The cops set up a special missing persons unit. The fans began to plan a candlelight vigil. The insurance company was on the phone. Venues across America were preparing for the tour to be canceled. The record company was upset, and Thelma, who was his wife at the time, thought she'd become a widow. First thing I did was call down to the front desk and ask them what time it was. And they said 6 o'clock. And then it says that he called them back and he was thinking to himself, that's perfect. 6 o'clock, show's in 2 hours, got all kinds of time. And then he says he called back down and says, wait, PM or AM? And then it wasn't long after that he showed up downstairs. He actually, you hear different stories about all the different sequence of events that happened, but one thing you hear a few different people say is that he just kind of walked into the lobby of the hotel like nothing had happened. And apparently, like he said, he felt fantastic. So anyway, so he shows up and then they're able to move on and go to the next town. Now they have an issue where they have to make up the show. And what happens then is the management of Black Sabbath contacts Noel and says, we need you guys to do us a huge favor because the only day that we can book this is our day off, which is in a couple days. And so they rescheduled the concert, like we said, we read in that other article. And then Van Halen, basically they'd already fulfilled their part of the contract. We played the show. You just didn't show up. So then Black Sabbath management contacts Noel Monk and says, hey, can we get you guys to do us a favor and come play a show on your day off, which is our day off too, but we've got to make up this show. And so Noel Monk in his book says, there's sometimes I'll be difficult, but this was one of those things where it felt like we just needed to work with the team. Black Sabbath had been really good to us. They'd introduced us to a whole new audience. This was a big deal for our band, so we just went along with it, took our normal pay, and just did the show one more time. Anyway, so that's what happened. So that leads up to November 12th, which was the day that they played the show. So here we go. Sab concert, ear opener. Thousands, this is from the Tennessean, November 13th, 1978. Thousands of teenagers packed a municipal auditorium yesterday afternoon for a makeup concert by heavy metal groups Black Sabbath and Van Halen. Most seats were filled and hundreds stood on the auditorium floor, jammed up against the stage for almost 3 hours while they were literally bombed with sound. Judging from the beer cans and liquor bottles in the parking lots around Capitol Hill and discounting the possibility of a nearby football game, many were already bombed when they arrived. The makeup concert was made necessary when Black Sabbath's lead singer, Ozzy Osbourne, went to the wrong room at the Hyatt Regency to take a nap Thursday afternoon and slept through the scheduled concert that night. And then he goes on, and you can tell this guy's not a Black Sabbath fan when you listen to the rest of this. If the band had only thought to play a few instrumentals, the sound would surely have awakened Osbourne. The Hyatt is only a few blocks from the auditorium, and the problems of rescheduling could have been avoided. Other things should be avoided too, specifically the words music and show in connection with this concert. There was little of each from either group. The high point in showmanship occurred during an instrumental break in the Van Halen set when the band's lead singer picked up a microphone stand, held it over his head, and jumped up and down. In appreciation, those on the floor raised their hands. There was no room to jump up and down, and many lit cigarette lighters. A few of the more appreciative lit firecrackers. The, quote, music was a steady drone-like roar. Osbourne screamed over it from time to time. Van Halen actually sang occasionally. By a score of 1-0, Van Halen was the more musical of the two groups, but they were loud enough to hide the fact. Without music and without show, the only remaining attraction has to be volume. And if the crowd reaction is a fair indicator, some of the best volume ever heard in Nashville occurred at Municipal Auditorium yesterday afternoon. Great volume, in fact. And that's the end of the concert review for the makeup concert after Ozzy slept through the first one. So that is, again, one of the most notorious moments that came from the Ozzy Osbourne Black Sabbath period. And it's one of those things that even resonates today. And it just added to the whole Ozzy story arc. There were so many moments in his story that just led to him kind of being the legend that he was. There were so many crazy things, and this was one of them. That just added to that heap, added to that pile of things that just ultimately, here we are, 55 years after Black Sabbath first started, and ultimately led to him being this household name. That when he dies, the whole world talks about it. So anyway, I just thought if you hadn't heard that story before, it's such an interesting one to talk about. And hopefully if you had heard that story, and I'd love to know if you had, if there was anything new in here that you hadn't heard before about, some of the specifics or some of the things that had happened. But it was such a big deal that everybody that was part of it, if they've written a book, they've said something about it because it had such an impact. It was such a big deal, and it kind of freaked out so many people at the time. Hey, I'd love to get your comments. If you're not following the channel, please follow the channel, and please like the video, share this with other people. And of course, with that, have yourself a fantastic day.